The film starts as we're acquainted with a 16-year-old youngster named Clifford. Peachy lives in a lavish lodging in Chicago with his grandma and his father, Mr. Peach, who is the administrator even. However, his grandmother is old. She frequently approaches the male visitors and attempts to request them out in front from their spouses. Mr. Peach is burnt out on her way of behaving and attempts to persuade her to stop. However, she doesn't. Tune in the following scene. Clifford is with his grandmother, who gives him some notepads and pencils since tomorrow is his most memorable day of school. When Mr. Peach shows up, he reprimands his mom for playing with a male visitor. She asks him to unwind, yet he denies, asserting they will have no place to go, assuming that he loses his work. The following day, Clifford prepares for his most memorable day at another school, and A in staff gives him a ride. When he enters the homeroom, he battles to find an unfilled seat. Since they're all taken, he ultimately tracks down a seat on the back seat and plunks down anyway. The kid close to him, Carson, cautions him that there are numerous old biting gums and goobers under his work area and encourages him to be careful. Albeit appalled, Clifford has no decision except for to remain at that work area. In a little while, a famous person named Surly enters the class and hands an apple to the educator. The instructor orders him to sit, yet he checks out at Clifford and claims he took his seat. Clifford claims that he was the person who sat for himself, and this prompts a short contention between them. At last, Irritable tracks down another seat and settles down the educator, then gets some information about a kid named Ricky Linderman, and the understudies guarantee that he is in prison. Some indeed even charge that he killed his own sibling and is currently running from the police. Subsequently, during lunch, Carson converses with Clifford and recommends that contending with Grouchy was definitely not a savvy move. He states that Touchy is exceptionally hazardous and nobody dark cares to contend with him. He additionally makes sense of how everybody needs to give him their lunch cash, with the goal that he doesn't hurt them. He guarantees he gave ill-humored all of his lunch cash, yet presently he needs his transport fare. Also hearing this, Clifford says he shouldn't allow anybody to deal with him like that and urges him to stand up anyway. Carson explains that he's doing these things since he would rather not pass on. He additionally cautions Clifford not to go to the restroom, or, in all likelihood, he will be cornered by the domineering jerks. Later, while strolling in the lobby, Clifford sees Irritable and his companions to stay away from them. He rapidly turns around and heads to the library. There, he peruses until the school closes. When he attempts to leave, Moody's posse snatches him. What's more, takes him to the washroom from the outset. They profess to be well disposed and ask about his life when they discover that he used to go to a tuition-based school. They believe he's rich, notwithstanding his disavowals. They request $1 from his lunch cash, consistently guaranteeing it's for his assurance. Clifford doesn't have the foggiest idea, so Surly makes sense of that. Some person named Ricky Linder went crazy and shot a couple kids, so he guarantees he can safeguard him from such crazy individuals and menaces. Anyway, Clifford perseveres and won't surrender his lunch cash, saying he really wants to eat. Hearing this, Irritable ends up being irate, so he takes some grimy water from the latrine and asks him to drink it, yet Clifford pours messy water in front of him and takes off from there. The domineering jerks start pursuing him around the school. Luckily, Clifford comes to the road where the vehicle is sitting tight for him. He right away gets into the vehicle as the domineering jerks come behind him on the manner in which the driver inquires about what their identity is, and Clifford concedes that they're simply menaces who need to murder him. At night, Clifford is on the gallery with his grandmother, and he's watching stripped women across the road. With his telescope at that point Mr. Peach shows up and chides his mom for attempting to entice a minister's child today. He then lets his child know that he heard about the harassers and has spoken with his chief. Hearing this, Clifford gets irate as he imagines that the domineering jerks will presently ruin his life. However, his grandmother urges him to not be apprehensive and kick them in the balls. The following day the chief discussions to Testy and censures him for his activities. He attempted to brush it off as a joke, however, the chief is irate. Also, allows him 14 days of confinement. In the wake of managing Cranky, he additionally talks to Clifford, advising him to be more strong and not to whine about little issues. Later in the foyer, ill-humored approaches Clifford and cautions him that he will not fail to remember what happened. Grumpy states he can go after Clifford whenever. Also, advises him to be cautious from this point forward. A short time later in class, the notorious Ricky Linderman appears and everybody is frightened to see him during sports practice. Grumpy keeps on tormenting Clifford and hits him, making him tumble to the ground. Some other time when Clifford opens his storage, he finds that his garments and books are shrouded in rubbish. Furthermore, food. He then takes his garments and attempts to clean them in the washroom, however understands that the tap isn't working. Minutes after the fact, Moody's gathering shows up in the restroom, so he rushes to stow away in the slow down. Inevitably, he thinks the menaces have avoided and tops with regard to the latrine just to find them looking at him. They start to badger him once more and request cash from him. When Clifford will not give cash, they continue to assault him. At that point, Ricky comes out of one of the latrine, slows down, so the menaces get apprehensive and leave. At some point later, Clifford approaches Ricky and offers him the valuable chance to bring in cash. He proposes that since the domineering jerks dread him, he needs Ricky to be his guardian. Also, safeguard him. He guarantees that this is better than blackmail and will likewise help different children. He vows to give him lunch cash and get his work done also. Anyway, Ricky states that he isn't intrigued by his proposition and strolls away. Throughout the following couple of days, Clifford is continually tormented by Moody's group and his life turns into a horrific experience. One day, while he's with his companions, he asks them what the matter is with Ricky. Carson claims that he's reputed to have killed somebody and lives in a slaughterhouse. Another kid cases to have heard that Ricky additionally abused his female instructor. Anyway, Clifford states that he doesn't trust any of these reports. One evening, the domineering jerks target another youngster who will not pay the cash. Since Clifford doesn't pay, in view of this, they become infuriated and approach Clifford to powerfully irritate him. They put him into the storage and shut it from the external. They then, at that point, leave and Clifford begins beating on the storage, requesting help. At that point, Ricky appears and he opens the storage entryway. Disappointed, Clifford inquires as to whether he's additionally here to menace him, yet Ricky just grins and expresses nothing. In the accompanying scene, Clifford approaches Moody's pack in the flask and douses them in mustard and ketchup. He then makes a speedy break and they begin pursuing him. Not long after, he experiences Ricky and illuminates the domineering jerks that he's presently his protector. He attests that no different children will pay them cash from here on out, seeing this different children snicker at the harassers. What's more, irritable urges his companions to battle with Ricky. Anyway, his companions decline to do so and let Cranky be. At that second, Carson ventures forward and flips him off. Feeling humiliated, Grouchy unobtrusively leaves there. Later, Clifford approaches Ricky and thanks him for his assistance. He attempts to proceed the discussion, yet Ricky declares that They are not companions and leaves. A short time later, Clifford approaches one of their educators and inquires as to whether the tales about Ricky are truly the instructor concedes that all she knows is that Ricky used to have a more youthful sibling. Sadly, one day the youngster tracked down his dad's weapon and unintentionally shot himself. Ricky was the one to find him, and from that point forward he hasn't been a similar name. The following day, Clifford attempts to get to know Ricky once more, asserting that since he didn't take the cash, he needs to reimburse his obligation. Ricky says he wants nothing from him. Furthermore, leaves after school. Clifford begins following him and winds up in a questionable neighborhood. Soon Ricky notification him and questions why he's here. Clifford concedes that he is familiar with his sibling and urges him to continue on from the past. Ricky just gets irritated and requests that he leave. Anyway, Clifford claims he doesn't have the foggiest idea. Step-by-step instructions to return home, so Ricky must choose between limited options. But to take him later on, the two show up at a carport where Ricky shows the bicycle he's been dealing with for a year. He makes reference to that there's just a single chamber passed on to find, yet it is no more fabricated, so the two visit numerous vehicle squandered destinations looking for this chamber. During this time Ricky opens, dependent upon him. It was simply to uncover that his late sibling, 9 years of age and loaded with life, he uncovers that he was the person who raised his sibling, and he communicates the amount he misses him consistently. In the long run, Ricky finds the missing chamber and fixes the cruiser. The two then, at that point, ride his bicycle all over town and have an incredible time together. A while later, Clifford brings him to the lodging and acquaints him with his family. He then takes him to the overhang where they watch the naked ladies through the telescope for the following couple of days. The harassers sto irritating any of the children, and the school becomes tranquil. During this time Ricky turns out to be more social and gets to know Clifford and other messes with. One day when they're all hanging out, Touchy appears with a more established person named Mike. They approach Clifford and his companions, and Touchy cases that he is his protector. Mike acquaints himself with Ricky and firmly crushes his hands. He then inquires as to whether Ricky is a similar person who killed his own sibling. Clifford inquires him to quit, guaranteeing they don't need any inconvenience, yet Mike keeps on provoking Ricky. In spite of this, Ricky chooses not to contend and leaves what is happening. He then begins riding his bicycle, yet Mike approaches him once more and difficulties him to a battle. Clifford asks Mike to leave them alone, yet he snatches the bicycle and starts to crush it. He then, at that point, pushes Ricky to the ground and cruelly hits him. Still Ricky doesn't retaliate, and the Bull police push his bicycle into a lake. After they're gone, Clifford attempts to converse with him, yet Ricky drives him away. Also, leaves in a little while. Clifford looks for Ricky in the carport and even visits his home, yet he's mysteriously gone. Disappointed, he gets back to the lodging and startlingly Ricky shows up on the gallery. He doesn't say a lot, however inquires as to whether he has some cash. Clifford gives him the $6 he has and asks where he's headed. Ricky doesn't answer and leaves, so Clifford follows him inevitably. Ricky requests that he stop and concedes that he never needed to be his guardian. In any case, he accepts he can do nothing right and is an all-out calamity. Clifford guarantees him that his sibling's passing wasn't his issue, and it could have happened to anybody. Hearing this, Ricky at last concedes that he was the person who shot his sibling. He asserts that they were playing with his dad's weapon, and at the point when he attempted to remove it, he unintentionally pulled the trigger. He was excessively frightened to uncover reality, so he put the weapon in his sibling's hand and let his dad know that he had shot himself. He says that this is the initial time he's uncovered reality to anybody and breaks into tears the following day. Carson tells his companions about how ill-humored took his cash. What's more, washed his food away for good. In the interim, Clifford and Ricky return to get the bicycle and attempt to fix it at that second. Grumpy and Mike appear once more and state that the bicycle has a place. To them, they request that they leave. Leaving the bicycle, however, this time Ricky quickly goes after Mike. They start battling carelessly and clumsily, inferring that they are the two newbies and, as it were, faking it minutes after the fact. Cranky attempts to go after Ricky, yet Clifford intercedes and starts battling with him. In the end, Ricky arises successful by effectively thumping down Mike. All things considered, of standing up to Surly, he energizes Clifford to take on his harasser himself. Clifford then goes after Grouchy with all of his solidarity and figures out how to break his nose. In the wake of overcoming him, he comes to comprehend that the one genuinely feeble and apprehensive isn't him. However, Grumpy in the interim, other school kids show up and begin giggling at Moody's forsaken state. In the last scene, the couple leaves with a bicycle. What's more, Ricky lets Clifford know that he was truly extraordinary in that battle. He states that he currently needs to employ him as his guardian and offers him 60 pennies for every day